This is what my baby said to me, Lord. Oh, dear man. She said she want a good life. No one to cross her.
Yes, Kavita. Yes, Malieka. All right.
No man to cross her pain and strife. She don't want no relation. One way a rock like a rocket ship. Want a love that's steady as can be. One that brings back memory. She want a good life. No man to cross her pain and strife.
Yes.
Where's you come? I can't see you.
Yes, guys, we just get a few technical things sorted.
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
You worked before?
She wants a man that's filled with ambition.
How come you can't see me?
I can see you.
Oh, you can see me.
I can see you. But you're
Okay.
you're sideways, man.
I'm sideways.
Yeah. That's better. That's the best I've seen you.
All right, cool. How am I looking? How am I looking?
Yeah. Divine.
Hey.
How you doing, sis?
I'm good, you know. I'm good. A few little technical hitches here and there, but besides that, I've got nothing to complain about.
That's it. It's not wrong. At least we're getting sorted out nice and early. Yeah?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me just position you because we can just about see your head.
Can you tell the technical support we can hear them, please?
We good?
All right, have you got a stand on that? Okay. Position that. Yeah, we probably may need to use a laptop to give you that edge. Move that.
Just sorting me out. Just sorting me out.
You don't need that. Put that there, Wayne.
How am I looking now?
Nah, that's proper. That's proper.
All right, word.
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah.
Word.
Aye. People, listen. Today we are joined by Malieka Selassie. Yeah, one of my sisters. Yeah. Listen, we've been working on this one for a bit. Yeah. A bit. And we're really looking forward to this one in particular. You know, as we look at the topic of Dear Black Man, what we need from you is, all right? But before we even go into that, I'm going to ask my favourite question, Malieka. Who are you?
I am Malieka. Most people kind of call me like Meeks or Meeka or some kind of variation. If I was to say who I am in the community, we're working in the community with Mind Over Body Chess Academy. That's how I kind of started. Yes. Then I started a course in Black Studies for the last 3 years. Kind of part of work with Epiphany people, work with Blessed. I'm part of a few collectives around Birmingham. So yeah, that's me.
All right, sis. That's beautiful. So yes. I think we need to kind of set the tone straight, really, innit? Like we agreed.
Yes.
So I'm gonna hand it over to you about what this live is and what it isn't.
Yes. So obviously with the title, people might be joining in thinking that it's gonna be like a man bashing our live, and that's definitely not what we're about here at Blessed. Either Black Studies or Epiphany people. What we want to do is kind of ground this in a post-COVID progression. How do we progress after, with the after effects of COVID? What are we doing as a people to kind of, use this opportunity to kind of further our progress as a people, basically. So, if you're here looking for, an anti-man narrative, if you're here with an anti-woman kind of narrative, this is probably not the space for you, because it's not going to be about that. You get what I mean? It's a conversation two people having a conversation, and you know, people joining and listening, and it's to start a conversation amongst your own social group, whether that be your family, your friends, you know, some of the various collectives that you might work with, about how we as a people start moving forward. Every time that there's a crisis, you know, it's an opportunity for us to kind of look within ourselves and, you know what I mean, look and see how we're going to move, how we're going to progress, what we're going to be doing, and how we do it. Most importantly, I think, you know, some of the problems that we've got within the Black community, we know them very well. We're very articulate in regards to the problems. My thing is, what about solutions? How do we become more solution orientated? What is it we're going to do so the next generation and the next generation after that don't necessarily have to deal with the trauma that we have lived through and our parents have lived through and our grandparents have lived through.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. No, so yeah, good. It's not a man bashing session, so if that's what you're looking for, best thing to do is just come off the live right now.
Yeah, we're really not about that. If you're not grounded in a space of healing and growth and progression and moving forward, it's this isn't for you. Anything that we're about, blessed, epiphany people, Black studies, this is not the space for you. We want to create a safe space where we can express ourselves, talk some things, say some things, and understand that, you know, your triggers are your teachers. So anything that I say, that anything that you say, if it triggers you, that's what you probably need to go and look at once the live is over. And, you know, ask your questions, put your comments in, and you get what I mean. Let's go. Let's do this.
Let's do it. So yeah, thank you for setting the context right. So, you know, what we spoke about before was kind of like, what are the things that women need to consider around this?
Women need to consider that whatever we're asking of the Black man is something that we need to encompass ourselves. It's something that we need to have whenever in any situation, whether that be, you know, parental, siblings, in, you know, intimate relationships, friendships, whatever we are asking of ourselves, we have to, whatever we're asking from somebody else, we need to make sure that we're showing up with that also, because then that's how balance is created. And the only way that we can progress is from a place of balance and neutrality and harmony.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because it's key that we do recognize that, because you know, there's a lot of people that will say things like, oh, well, you know, if we're going to be entering into relationships, then we need to be healed. But you know, that's also quite a false narrative, because you know what I mean, a lot of us are work in progress. Do you know what I mean? And it's about recognizing that, you know what, there are areas that we all kind of need to improve on.
Definitely. You
know, and kind of learning the art of critically analyzing ourselves and stuff like that, really. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Yeah. So so yeah, we spoke about a lot of stuff, you know. So there's some stuff around in terms of what would you say some of the barriers are in terms of us, what are the barriers in terms of our relationships, would you say?
One of the main barriers is our inability to critically analyze our lived experience. It's about how we leave ego, emotion, our gender bias, our religion to a certain extent at the door, and start looking at the different components of Blackness that have impacted us over the last, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So, you know, you're breaking up our lived experience into what Francis Kress-Welsing taught us, which is the 9 areas of people activity. So you're looking at the judicial system, how does that affect us? You're looking at the educational system, how does that affect us? How does media representation affect us? How does entertainment, all of these different components, how they affect us, and where we have been placed by the system, and how we're accountable for where we are at this moment in time. So a lot of it is starting with accountability. You get what I mean? Accountability, you know, individual accountability, but also collective accountability as well. You know what I mean? And the interconnection between those two things for the individual, but the interconnection between in those two things within our relationships. And like I said, what I want to stress is that it's not just about our intimate relationships, we're talking about the relationships with black men in its entirety. So it's our fathers, it's our brothers, it's our cousins, it's our friends, as well as the men that we choose to procreate with and the men that we choose to be intimate with. It's never going to be one way. There's loads of different aspects that we need to be looking at, critically analyzing. You get what I mean? I think that reconceptualizing what black masculinity looks like from the media perspective, and then kind of turning that back on ourselves and looking at our lived experience is what black men are, or what black men are programmed or being told that, yeah, is that the lived reality? And I don't think that it is, but I do think that as a people, we don't critically analyze our lived experience nowhere near enough as much as we used to, because if we did, we would understand the difference between some of the things that we're accountable for, but some of the things that are completely out of our control.
Do you know what? I totally relate to that, because one of the things I keep talking about is contextualizing your own lived experiences and
Definitely
things that you've been through. You need to kind of like process that, because
Definitely.
whether it's from a little boy, yeah, your experiences, to a big man, how you manage your relationships, how you might manage say co-parenting, how you might manage being an academic, how you manage working in the workplace. So you made quite a point about bringing into the discussion around masculinity, and
Yes.
masculinity is kind of plays on both sides, really, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah, would you like to tell us a bit more about that, please?
If we know that as spiritual beings we encompass both masculine and feminine energy, we need to understand how the system and Babylon messes with that balance. When we're talking about gender biases, the woman's role, the man's role, if we look at black men in particular, if the black man is here, or men, masculinity says that you're here to protect and provide. How do black men do that? How do black men do that when the violence is enacted on them? How do black men do that when they are, excluded and marginalized in the labor market? Do you get what I mean? If a man isn't able to do these things systematically, not because he's lazy, not because he doesn't have the education, not because he doesn't have the motivation, not because he doesn't have the ideas or the creativity, how do we then relate to each other when one component of that is systematically taken away from us? Cheryl Phoenix talks about the, school to prison pipeline. That's a real thing. So if we're still putting black boys into an educational system that we know is failing them, what are we expecting to come out at the other end? Do you get what I mean? If we're still looking at it, so the only options that they've got is sports, music, or criminality, do you get what I mean? What are we producing at the other end? And as the female counterpart to that, how do we navigate those relationships with our fathers, our brothers, our cousins, our friends, and our partners when this is a man's lived reality? So I feel that at some point there has to be a level of understanding and understanding of our lived experience. But if we're not talking to each other and we don't know how to be friends, that's not going to happen. And I don't think that we've learned, as the black man and the black woman, I don't think that we've learned how to be friends first and foremost. How we don't discuss how the system and Babylon actually is designed to enforce that disconnect. You get what I mean? And because we're not looking at it from a critical point of view, we're missing the areas of solutions. You get what I mean? The area where the solution can be, but we're always talking about the problems. You get what I mean? We're not solution orientated enough. I look at the Black Pound Day, brilliant initiative, solution orientated. Do you understand what I mean? It's a solution. Do you understand me? Where is the equivalent for that, for reconnecting with each other on a level that is outside of the adultification of black boys and black girls, the sexualization, get me, across the board? Do you understand what I mean? And start pointing fingers at each other. You get what I mean? Let's sit down and let's start looking at all the different aspects that that impact our lived experience, and let's start discussing them openly from a space of healing and growth and progression.
So you know what? As you mentioned, that to me kind of suggests the whole notion again around safe spaces. Yeah. So I'd like you to kind of, you know, go into a bit more about safe spaces, for especially for black men and stuff.
Okay, so, you know, bringing it back to what we need from the black man, there has to be a place and a space where the black man feels safe to be open and vulnerable. And it's a collective creation. You get what I mean? Both counterparts have to create that safe space. And again, those safe spaces have to exist within our intimate relationships, but also outside of our intimate relationships. If each counterpart always feels like they're under attack, you get what I mean? Oh, you're not doing this and I'm not doing that. And where's the room for growth? Where's the room for healing? Do you get what I mean? Sometimes we have to be scientists.
Yes.
You get what I mean? It's about being, you know, social science. You know what I mean? How do we really start picking apart the bits that we know aren't working for us? So, for instance, let's objectively look at father absence. The black man has to objectively look at father absence. If you're a present father, but your brethren is an absent father, what type of conversations are you two having?
Yeah.
Are you pulling up your brethren and saying, yo, you know what I mean? You're not seeing you then walk on for that. Do you get what I mean? What is that? Why aren't you doing this? Are you having those conversations? If he doesn't have a father, his father was absent. When does he go and have that conversation with his dad? Is he able to have that conversation with his dad? So there's a lot of inner child healing that we all need, because father absence doesn't just affect the person whose father is absent, it affects the village, the community. Do you get what I mean? Because when somebody like myself who comes from a two-parent family, I can't relate to certain things because that's not part of my lived experience. But I also have another experience of having a dad who wasn't employed. Do you get what I mean? For a very long time. Someone's telling me to fix the camera. How do I look?
You're looking good now.
Okay, cool. You get what I mean? So, you know, when we're talking about being employed, you know what I mean? We know that in every Western society, the black man is systematically excluded and marginalized from employability, from the labor market. How does that impact his role within the family?
Yeah.
What does the woman do when all the pressure, the financial pressure is on her? Do you understand what I mean? When we don't sit down with each other and say, you know what, all right then, boom. Babes, you know what I mean? Money needs to run. You know what I mean? No household can survive on one income. Do you get what I mean? What are we doing? You know what I mean? We don't have, you know, we're talking about businesses. We're talking about setting up schools. We're talking about, you know, a Black Teachers Association, a Black Lawyers Association. How do we incubate and turn ourselves inward on ourselves in order to move forward? It starts with a foundation of love, respect, forgiveness. And the only way that we can start forgiving each other is when we start critically analyzing, how did this happen? This is not by accident. You know what I mean? It happens here. It happens in America. It's happening in Australia. It's happening in every African country where, you know, other outsiders are able to move in, take over the labor market, take over the education, take over. And it's Babylon. We know what the system's about. We know how it teaches everybody else that this is modernity. But if we look at who we were before Western infection and white invasion, you get what I mean? We were good. You get what I mean? It wasn't perfect, but we were better than where we are now. Do you get what I mean? So looking outside of ourselves isn't going to get us anywhere. It really is about reparations. To repair yourself is to repair the family, is to repair the community, is to repair the Black nation. That's what it's about.
And from what I'm picked up from there is shame plays a massive part, because you know, that discussion, I was even listening to a tune the other day, and it was talking about how sometimes when it comes to men paying bills and these sort of things, for a man to bring up the conversation of money seems to be very much an issue. And
yeah,
shame, because, you know, the sense of failure, because you're the man, you're the provider, you're the alpha male, and because you're not in that position. And nowadays we're in positions now where in couples often the women are sometimes the breadwinners. They're earning more than men. So how does
which is systematic?
Yes, indeed. So
which is systematic.
You know,
because if we look at what happens in the educational system, Black boys get kicked out of school. they don't get their GCSEs. It's very rare that they go into higher education, especially from an Afro-Caribbean perspective. Black girls are pushed through school. So that creates the wage disparity within the household. You get me? Money means independence.
Yes.
So when we're buying into media representation of the independent woman, you get what I mean? And you know what I mean? Can you pay my bills? At one point they were talking about paying my bills, and then how many years later they're talking about being independent? What does independence look like when it takes two? Do you get what I mean? It actually does take two, regardless of how you want to look at it. Nobody can do this by themselves. We cannot do it alone. Do you understand what I mean? And we're not meant to. So, you know, it's looking, again, like I said, looking at things that have happened, that have happened to us, and why those things have happened to us, and who benefits. Nobody benefits from us not being able to sit down and communicate with each other effectively. We don't benefit. The system benefits. Babylon always benefits when we're not on the same page. Always. It's part of their plan. Do you understand what I mean? It's what the system does. Do you understand what I mean? So instead of looking at each other, you get what I mean, side-eyeing each other, it's about us sitting down and having uncomfortable conversations. You know what I mean? There should be a lot of crying. There should be a lot of tears. You get what I mean? There should be a lot of, you know what I mean, I'm sorry. You get me? For my part in this, for your part in this, and a level playing field. All right, let's wipe the slate clean. That was then. This is now. How do we move forward?
Absolutely. And you know what? That whole 99 Can You Pay My Bills era. I remember that song Scrubs was thrown in at the same time.
At the same time.
Hey, that Scrubs was a wicked tune, you know, because the same people
the
that
same
was calling
time.
man Scrubs, the same ladies that was calling man Scrubs, yeah, back in 99 for standing at the bus stop, they were still catching buses as well. So
exactly.
So
what are we saying here? We understand that media representation is it's probably the most powerful tool. Now that we've got social media, now that we've got YouTube and so forth and all the rest of it, we need to look down at how it breaks us down. Who does Sunday dinner anymore? Are we sitting around the table with each other, checking in with each other? You get what I mean? Through COVID, who picks up the phone and check their vision that I haven't spoken to for from a female perspective? Do you get what I mean? If I phone you now and I say, yo, bro, are you good? Do you get what I mean? I've cooked a pot of food here. Come get something. What are you expecting that to be? Do you understand what I mean? Do you get that that is just me showing you a level of love that doesn't necessarily have to lead to something else? How do we become, I don't like the word friends, do you get what I mean? But how do we become sisterins and brethrens and homies in this? Do you get what I mean? Because if we're talking about a war, do you get what I mean? The war shouldn't be between each other. The competition shouldn't be between each other. We should be working together in order to combat the system, in order to combat racism. Do you get what I mean? But that's not going to happen unless we create spaces where Black men feel comfortable being open and vulnerable. Do you get what I mean? And where Black women are allowing men to be soft, to do those types of things. If we're continually pointing the finger at the gender biased roles that don't work, do you get what I mean? It simply doesn't work for us. Do you get what I mean? And stop comparing ourselves to other people. Nobody's had the journey that we've had. Nobody. Do you get what I mean? And stop allowing the system to tell us. Stop allowing them to racially gaslight us. Stop, stop making them question, no, you are actually seeing it is for what it is. Do you understand what I mean? And it throws loads of different distractions your way in order for us to stop doing this kind of work, internally and externally, like I said, within the family home, within the community, how do we create that village again?
Totally agree. And
I've seen a comment about faith. Do you understand what I mean? And religion and things like that. Perfect. But what those people who don't necessarily buy into that, we can't allow that to be the answers. Oh, you have to become this in order for it to work, or you have to be doing that in order for it to work. It has to be something that is innate to us automatically, regardless of whatever religion or level of spirituality you choose to encompass. To get what I mean? It has to be a thing within Blackness that, we're on the same page outside of any other kind of influence, for want of a better word.
Yeah, because we spoke about this earlier on in terms of the role of spirituality in the relationships with black and men and women, and in terms of like how that seems to reflect a level of successful relationships. Do you know what I mean? Or perceived successful relationships. So yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's massive having those, you know, a shared value base. So really, ultimately, it's about a shared value base. And
100%.
And you know what? We spoke in other lives about that secure base for children. I remember speaking to Matthew Popo about that. And yeah, the secure space for each other. You know what? Our home should be our sanctity. Our home should be that safe space. You know what? We're facing enough things out there. Yeah. That when we come back home, we should be nice. We can talk. Yeah, and we are not. There's no need for us to be going outside of the front door to be seeking peace, because when we start seeking peace outside of our front door, this is where the problems tend to start. So that's when we start seeing the issues around gambling, drug taking, alcohol, womanizing, and all the other sorts of evils that are out there. Do you know what I mean? So these are some of the things we need to look at, how we accommodate one another.
Yes, and you know how we need to talk about what does the system do to you? How does that make you feel without imposing somebody else's feelings on it? If you say, Malieka, it makes me feel like this, you know, I'm not meant to turn around and say, well, boy, I don't see it like that. Of course I don't see it like that. I'm not a man. Yes. Do you understand what I mean? You can't turn around and then say to me, oh, well, it's not like that. Well, of course you don't see it my way. You're not a woman. It's about how we communicate and meet in the middle of something. So I've got a better understanding of how it feels for you to walk out that front door, knowing that your life is continually at risk. Do you understand what I mean? And what perpetual fear looks like. I feel for black people that we have been programmed to always be scared of something, whether it's losing our brothers, losing our fathers, you know what I mean, that level of, you know what I mean, abandonment, get me, that level of rejection, do you get what I mean? And what does that make you do? I mean, I feel like the Willie Lynch letter, even though it's fake, the psychology of it can't be disputed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Can't be disputed.
Absolutely.
You read that book, you're supposed to read that book and look back and be like, okay.
Yes.
Get me, scratch, you know what I mean? And say, well, okay, I get it now. Do you understand what I mean? Or I get part of it, or this part of it resonates with me. So it resonates with you. What are you going to do to fix it internally and externally? How do you then not make sure that that level of fear is instilled in the next generation? Are you constantly on your child's phone? Are you always worried about? My little brother went to London, scared for the whole weekend. You know what I mean? Is he okay? Yeah. Is he okay? Is he okay? Do you understand what I mean? So if I'm scared, you get what I mean? That means my mom's scared. That means my other sister's scared. That means, you know what I mean? And that's our lived reality as females every single day. So when we don't want you to go somewhere, or we're saying to you, you know what? You get me? We don't want you to go somewhere. Is it because we don't actually want you to have the fun? Or is it scared that we're actually scared that you're not going to return home tomorrow, whether it be by police brutality or anything else? Do you get what I mean? So again, accountability, some of the things we are accountable for. We're accountable for not getting in front of the system, not seeing what Babylon does, and, you know what I mean, navigating, moving out of the way. Do you get what I mean? So when we're saying again, school to prison pipeline, how long has that existed? Why are we still putting black boys into school? Okay, there's nowhere else for them to go. We need to create somewhere else for them to go then. We need black men to teach young black boys. Do you get what I mean? What's the percentage of black male teachers? Do you understand what I mean? All these areas need to be looked at. Do you get what I mean? Every single one of them need to be critically analysed so we can start forming solutions. And it's a two-way thing. So as much as what I'm asking of a black man, I need to give him space in order for him to dissect those things within himself. He then needs to go and say, all right, then I'm looking at this, bro, what are you looking at? Get me, what's man looking at? Okay, then when are we going to get together and start, you know what I mean, patterning up these things? You get what I mean? What kind of female do we bring into this safe space now so she can express how she sees this lived reality from her point of view? Am I guilty of that? You get what I mean? If I'm guilty of that, do I go back and say sorry, or do I just make sure that it's better for the next person? Loads of different things we need to be looking at, but really and truly, we do need to be critically analysing who we are, who told us who we are, what's the benefits of them telling us that we are this particular way, and how we start unlearning some of the programs that just don't serve us as a people.
Decolonizing our minds, man.
Decolonizing our minds, just like how we talk about decolonizing our curriculum. Are they going to decolonize our curriculum? Not when it works for them.
No.
Not when it works for them. Not when it continually perpetuates a stereotype. We've got to take ourselves away from that to a certain extent, to get what I mean, and create our own curriculum and teach ourselves and the next generation and our elders, this is the way forward. And it all starts off with solidifying that foundation and reconnecting as Black men and Black women.
Yes. So, you know, I want to touch a bit more on that masculinity because, yeah. So, in terms of that, how would you say that that where masculinity within the females, because there's masculinity and femininity in men and women. So, how would you say the role that masculinity plays within women?
When you've been programmed to believe that the breadwinner is the head of the family and you become the breadwinner, I mean, what does that even mean for us? What does that even mean? Black women have always worked. We've always had to work. We've always had to play our part financially. We didn't have the luxury of sitting at home. My grandmother didn't sit at home. She came from Jamaica. I went straight to work. My granddad worked. Do you understand what I mean? So, but when it came to making decisions, they sat down, they communicated with each other, and he was the person that said, this is how it's going to go. Do you get what I mean? So when we as women are forced to take on the masculine, what we've been programmed to believe is the masculine side of things, we take on all the rest of it, the aggression, you know what I mean, the toughness, do you get what I mean? You can't tell me what to do, where to wear, blah, blah, blah. Do you understand what I mean? If we're more balanced within that and we can understand how society does that and why it does that, because it creates this disconnect between us, to get what I mean. Yes, you can still be the main breadwinner. I mean, like I said, I don't even know what that means, or but it's your mentality and your conduct around that. Do you get what I mean? Around that, what does that actually mean to be the main breadwinner? What are the behaviors of the main breadwinner? Do you get what I mean? And not to internalize the negative aspects of what that means as well. You also then can't necessarily call man out of his name if he's excluded from something and marginalized from something. And finances is not just the only area of parenting that men should be involved in. They should be involved in all aspects. Both parents should. Do you understand what I mean? So when we do that gender thing, this is my role and this is his role, but we live in a society that doesn't uphold, promote, or support that. Are we really doing the right thing? You get what I mean? Are we really communicating in the right way? Do you get what I mean? I don't think we've been taught, and that's why I talk about accountability, fault, and blame. Get me? It's not our fault because the program is there to do what it does. Do you understand what I mean? But we're accountable for not recognizing the signs and doing things differently.
Yeah. So we touched upon the role of masculinity in terms of women. What would you say the role in terms of femininity in men, and how that kind of changes the balance in terms of how we interact with one another? Okay,
again, the program of being tough, not talking about how you feel, finding it extremely difficult to be vulnerable, because that's not what society tells you, and that's across the board. That's not just black men, but black men are always going to get the worst end of it, because there were other areas of masculinity that are not available or afforded to them as much as their other counterparts. So man comes home, he went to the job center. There were no jobs for him because there weren't any jobs for anybody. What happens when he walks back through that door? What does he do? Does he get to sit down and cry about it? Does he get to say, yo, I feel like I'm not doing, you get me? Does he get to do that? Does he get to let go of that? And like you mentioned before, when he doesn't have that safe space within his household, whether that be his girlfriend or his mom or whatever, how does he then go and, how does masculinity has to be performed in some way? It has to be. And if it's not performed in the way that society, westernized society tells us to, how does that actually play out? And we know exactly how it plays out within the black community. They're making points of it on Twitter. We've got, MPs and politicians asking black men, you get what I mean? Do you, have you ever seen or met your dad? So, what's that?
Basically.
What is that? Do you get what I mean? So how does that then make all of us, but especially the person that is being attacked, i.e. the black man, how does that make him feel? And where does he go to go and express that now? And is he in a position to go and express that to his sister, his mom, his cousin, or his partner?
And
we don't, nobody gets, I don't feel that white society gives us a chance to be our authentic self and to look at all parts of us and to understand that all parts of it is for us to have. To get what I mean? Yes, sometimes I have to be a bit tough. Sometimes I have to be a bit strong, but at the same time, I want, you know what I mean, allow me to be weak. Both of us, not just black men, not just black women, both of us.
absolutely, absolutely. Why? I knew you was gonna bring the fire, you know, sis. I knew you was gonna bring the fire, and you was gonna be nervous. Please.
Still a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Nerves is good. Nerves is good. So listen, there was lots of other topics that you want. Is there anything you wanted to bring up? I was gonna, you know, in terms of what we spoke about.
I think I want us to kind of look at COVID.
Yeah, go on.
I think, you know what I mean, last week when I listened to Dr. Roberta Babb's live, she said a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And it just resonated with me on so many different levels. So we've had Brexit, which was another crisis. You know what I mean? What does that say to us? Now we've had, you know what I mean, COVID. They're saying that, you know, we you know what I mean, that affected us more than it affected anybody else. You know what I mean? The BAME community. Do you get what I mean? How are we going to, then we've had George Floyd right in the middle of that. You get what I mean? And all the other, you know what I mean, instances of police brutality. What do we do? How do we move forward? What are we going to do to move forward? How do we do that? My thing is that there's no way of us doing that until we get the connect between us sorted. Do you understand what I mean? And it's from both sides. So when we're asking black men to be accountable for the collective, do you get what I mean, as individuals, do you get me? When we're asking black men to be open and honest and vulnerable, do you get what I mean? What does that actually look like? You know, we're throwing about, you know, people are throwing a load of buzzwords around healing, growth, progress, but what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
What are the actual steps to that? You get what I mean? Are people going to come off this live now and just say, yo, that was good, you know? Or are they actually going to go and pick up a pen and a paper and say, all right, then, this is what I need to look at in the child healing. This is what I need to look at, you know what I mean? Social, economical pressures, do you get what I mean? These are the things that we actually need to proactively look at within ourselves first and foremost. And then are you going to take that piece of paper and go to your brother and say, all right, then I think we need to look at this. Do you get me? Did you do what's your top 10 things that you want to look at? And like I said, approach it like from a science, you get me? Science, you know what I mean? It's not value free. You get me? It can never necessarily be objective because there's a lot of emotion involved. It's emotive. Do you understand what I mean? But put those emotions to one side for a second, stand back from your lived experience several places and look at how they deal with us and how the system actually deals with us. Some people might be interested in education. Okay, so I want to be a teacher. So when little black boys go to school, they see somebody that looks like them in front of them. Or I want to start a black school, get me, for whoever. Do you get what I mean? How do I go about doing that? Am I sitting down with the right types of people? Am I connecting differently? Do you understand what I mean? And then supporting the things that we do also already have in place.
Yes.
Do you get what I mean? Or rejigging them. Maybe it needs a fresh paint of coat. You get what I mean? A fresh coat of paint. You get what I mean, rather? Are we doing those works? And if we're not doing those works, then we need to understand that in 5 years' time, it will be worse. 10 years' time, it will be worse. 20 years' time, 30 years' time, these things are wrap. Complete and utter wrap. They've got us sewn up. But every time that there is a crisis, we can always use it as an opportunity to push ourselves further.
And this is what this lockdown and all of this has allowed us to do. You know, that again, I say nearly every single live, that 2020 vision that we never quite knew what it was about. Woke up, I was saying, remember I said to you earlier on, today I am so tired. I had a sleepless night, but I am so awake. It's unbelievable. And that's what we need to do. No matter how tired we are, don't drop asleep.
Yeah.
Don't drop asleep. Yeah. We
100%.
need to say, well, We need to stay woke, whatever.
You know, they keep their foot on our necks in so many different ways. You know what I mean? A lot of people are making a lot of noise. Do you understand what I mean? How are you individually here to enact change? What is your sole purpose? What are you here to do? And regardless of what it is, it must always be a case of, I'm here to elevate, enhance, promote, and maintain blackness. Do you get what I mean? The best parts. You know what I mean? Our culture is for sale. You get what I mean? Urban culture is now a watery version of black culture. Get me? But we're not benefiting from it. We're not financially benefiting from it. Why is that? Get me? Why do they keep on taking stuff that belongs to us and selling it back to us watery and poisoned? Do you get what I mean? Who is allowing this? Do you understand what I mean? And at the same time, we also got to be mindful that bills have to be paid. Do you get what I mean? So we're part of the system in order for us to get what we need from the system in order to build our own system.
Absolutely. So, sis, you know, moving forward, right? How can we help ourselves through the stage where we can critically reflect our experiences without causing any harm?
I think again, it's a lot of reading, and no, in fact, I'm going to take that back, because if that's not necessarily your forte or the things that you like to do, go onto YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And let's just look at, we're going to pick two topics. We're going to look at the judicial system, and we're going to look at the educational system, and what those two areas of people activity do to black men. Let's look at that first and foremost. Let's put down, and when you get angry, which you will, get what I mean? What are you going to do with that anger? How do you turn that pain into purpose? Yes, Naomi, I took it. You get what? How we turn that pain into purpose? Do you get what I mean? What do we do with it? Do you understand what I mean? You know, use our emotions to benefit us. Don't use them to suppress ourselves even more than what the oppressor is doing at this moment in time. It's also a lot about self-reflection and self-evaluation. And, you know, a lot of us buy into the system subconsciously. You know what I mean? So, you know, are we having conversations with our children about what it is to be black? The good bits, the positive bits, the brilliant bits, but also the not so good bits, the negative bits, and teaching our children that the negativity isn't something that is innate with us. That's society. You can't use that as a coping mechanism, or you can't use that as a what's the word I'm looking for, as a safety blanket. You get what I mean? Oh, well, Babylon does this and it, so I'm good. Nah, Babylon's been doing this for a very, very long time, and it will continue to do that. What are you about to do about it? What are you going to do about it? You get what I mean? No more sitting down and just having it. You get what I mean? We can't have it anymore. You know what I mean? Like I said, I've talked about Black Pound Day. We're not having it. We're just not having, you know what I mean? We've looked at ourselves. We do a lot of spending outside of our own community. Let's incubate ourselves. Do you get what I mean? And, you know what I mean? If other people, other factions of society want to come and support the thing, that's fine. You get what I mean? But if we are supporting our own thing, this is how we move forward. So it's about doing that self-reflection, that self-excavation. It's about removing the oppressor from within, really, because you know what I mean, it's taught us a lot, and it's about unlearning, and it's a process. You know what I mean? As you go older, you'll do more of it, but you know, reflection without implementation and knowledge isn't going to get us anywhere. We can reflect all day. Action is needed now, and what does action look like? And if we don't know what it looks like, where do I go to find what it looks like? Do you understand what I mean? Who's going to give me the opportunity to speak? Do you get what I mean? And how it's all about the how now. Do you get what I mean? We know the whys, we know the whens, we know the wheres. Do you get what I mean? How are we doing this? How are we going to move forward?
Sis, you've set, I think you set the tone quite straight, because in the beginning, we spoke about establishing that this isn't a man bashing session. Yeah. But I think we need to address the man bashing that kind of takes place. Yeah. So, all right then. So we discussed this earlier on about how, you know, misery loves company. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? In some circles, there are, you know, people will find themselves blaming and shaming, you know, each other for things. So, you know, I'd like your
Yes.
opinion on that, to be honest.
Okay. Blaming and shaming is a natural response, isn't it? It's also a program. Do you understand what I mean? So let's take, for instance, the workless black man. Let's look at him for a couple of minutes. Why is he workless? When's the last time somebody asked a man that hasn't got a job or isn't financially secure why he's in that position? You get what I mean? Because when we're not asking that question, but we're just saying, oh, you're workless, you know. Get me? Do you know why you're actually here? Do you get what I mean? Does he then get to sit back and reflect on his own lived experience? You get what I mean? We're not creating that. Do you understand what I mean? When you go back to your friends and her baby father's not doing his job, your baby father's not doing his job, you get me? Are you sitting now with a bunch of women that are having the same lived experience as you without being objective within that lived experience? And it's also about acknowledgement as well. The black man does have to acknowledge the things that he has got wrong collectively, has to acknowledge it. It's painful, it's uncomfortable. Do you understand what I mean? But
Frozen. IG's playing up. All right, all right. We're just gonna wait for her to join us back again, okay? As you can see, you know, she was really, really going in, yeah, really going in, and we had to go there about the culture of blaming and shaming. I don't know, it must be a signal issue about where she's gone, but we had to name the elephant, talk about the elephant in the room. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, it is that, you know. We you know, me and Malieka was talking about how sometimes I remember walking into a room and it's like, my baby father this, my baby father that, my baby father that. And you know what? Misery really does love company. And what we did speak about is that some women, when they're in that situation, they don't feel that they could actually say, well, actually, my baby father's all right, you know, he's good, because of fitting in, or sense of belonging, and some of the other issues that go along with being as part of a group. So sometimes people will perpetuate and you know, it's almost like that trauma kind of bonding. People are bonding through adversity, and you know, we need to be, in terms of healing, we need to know who we're going to, what and what we're, you know, when we're in that position, we need to know who we're going to, because sometimes our friends can lead to adverse effects, and they can program us and bring us down the wrong way. Malieka, where are you? I don't know. But yes, guys, you know what I mean? It's nice to see so many comments and stuff on the live. Yeah. This has been really, really powerful. You know, much appreciated. Guys at Blessed, do you know where she is? Can you give me a little message on the live? Richard, perhaps, Little Wayne. Just gonna try. Okay, guys, I've just been told she's just coming back in. All right. But nice one for the comments and everything else, you know. She'll be back for sure, for sure, for sure. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know what? This is it. This is the space where we're going to be doing our healing. I'm going to kind of give you the heads up. This is probably going to be the last couple of our lives, to be honest, guys. Yeah. We're just waiting for her to join back. You're back.
Hey! I knew it, you know. I knew it. I knew it was going to happen, but we're good. We're good. We're good.
We're good. We're good. We're good. Lots. So yes, that blaming culture and that
Doesn't matter.
It's there.
Doesn't matter. We have to blame the system. We have to understand that we were born into a world where our identities were handed to us. Do you understand what I mean? It wasn't. This is not some part of our creation. You know, I'm not part of our grandparents' creation, not part of our great grandparents' creation. So, you know, the pathologies, the cultural legacies, all those types of things. Who wants to stop that? Who wants to be part of stopping that? Who wants to be part of or saying, yeah, it was this way up until 2020? Do you get what I mean? Where, you know what I mean? Boris was able to tell us to all sit down, backside down in our yard, and we all did it.
Yeah.
Because we had no other choice. Do you understand what I mean? What's coming next? You get what I mean? They're talking about vaccines. We're hearing stuff about curfew. Now there's only 6 of us that can sit down in the yard. If that's what it's going to be, those 6 people in that household need to start having some serious conversations about how we get out of this. You get what I mean? How we get out of this. You know what I mean? Literally, you know what I mean? Literally, figuratively, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. It's time for us to get our houses in order. And, you know what I mean? No house can be built on a weak foundation. So we have to learn how to be brothers and sisters again.
Yeah.
We really, it's imperative. Our survival depends on it. Do you get what I mean? Our thriving depends on it. Do you get what I mean? And if we're not doing that work every day, get me every day. Do you understand what I mean? Because tomorrow is promised to no one, as we know. Do you get what I mean? But when you leave here, you get what I mean? What do you want to be able to say? You know what I mean? Like, I gave it my best shot. Are we giving it our best shot at this moment in time? Not if we're not working together. Not if we haven't got each other's backs. We're not doing it. If we're not cool with each other. And I think, you know, we romanticize forgiveness. Get what I mean? And some people think that, you know, forgiveness is condoning. Forgiveness isn't condoning. It's freeing up yourself in order for you to move forward. You don't want to be carrying this emotional, racial baggage with you everywhere. It's tiring. It's really, really tiring. Do you understand what I mean? And, you know, we need each other differently. We actually need each other. At what point are we going to recognize that and start doing the work in order for us to get back to that? Do you get what I mean? Taking some of the things that were good before, and, you know what I mean, taking some of the things that didn't work, you know what I mean, critically analysing what our parents were doing correctly, what they didn't do correctly, our grandparents, so forth, and going all the way back and saying, oh, I love that bit, and I love that bit, although I don't think that bit works. To get what I mean? How do you feel about this bit here? Did it work from your point of view? Because I don't think it worked from my point of view. Communication and meeting in the middle. Get me? Collective communication and meeting in the middle.
Meeting in the middle. Now, listen, we spoke about this here. It's been quite a journey and a process to kind of get to that point. So what we acknowledged is that there's a level of self-work that needs to take place for us to be able to exist together. So tell us a bit more about the self-work and the sort of things that you may want to consider.
Okay, so my story time. Last couple of days I had a conversation. I was dreading having this conversation. Remember what I said about perpetual fear? Scared. Do you know what I mean? Didn't know what the outcome was going to be. Do you understand what I mean? Maybe it's, you know, all the retrogrades that are going on. Maybe it was just a case of, you know, me doing this live review. I wanted to be at peace with certain things. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I built up a negative picture in my mind. Do you understand what I mean? This is going to go bad. I had everything ready, all the ammo. I had, you get me, the AK-47, the Luger. I had it all. I was ready Do you get what I mean? I picked up the phone, I dialed, and I got the answer. Do you get me? The person answered, and the conversation didn't go anywhere way that I thought it was going to go. So I had nothing. I built that up in my mind so much. Do you understand what I mean? I had nothing. Get me? So self-work is always about you. You get what I mean? It's not necessarily about him, whoever that him may be, whether that be your dad, whether that be your brother, whether that be your cousin, your brethren. It's not about him. You get me? It's not about her. It's about you. If we continually remind ourselves that we are each other's reflection, to get what I mean, and we cannot do this without each other, self-work becomes a place of healing. We have to look at healing as fun, even the horrible bits. Do you get what I mean? My inner child work. Do you know what I mean? Really and truly looking back at that child, looking at what that child needed, what she didn't get, and looking at my parents and understanding that they probably didn't get what they needed. Do you get what I mean? Did they even know what they needed? Do you understand what I mean? My grandparents, my great-grandparents. So inner child work, just pick aspects of self-work, of self-healing. What is the bit that's really getting to me? That's my bit that I need to look at, because your triggers are your teachers. They are. Do you get what I mean? And because we've had to sit down with ourselves, you get me? We haven't been able to be busy. You know what I mean? You can't go out on a Friday night because you got to sit down in your house. You get what I mean? This is the time. It's been the time. Now that we're back in the midst of it all, coming out of it, do you really want to go back out there? Is it really all that great? Do you get what I mean? And, you know, do you want to go to a cinema to watch a movie where it continually tells us that we are slaves? Do you get what I mean? Do you want to be in charge of the media representation that shows the other story? You know what I mean? Where's our Nanny of the Maroons movie? Who's going to write that? Who's going to shoot that? Who's going to do these things? We need to get in front of the narrative. To get what I mean? We need to start creating a different narrative. So the self-work starts with looking at the areas of your life that you don't want to look at, the bits that make you extremely uncomfortable, and getting to grips with that, and saying to whatever male that you're around, you get what I mean, or whatever female that you're around, okay, then maybe that's something that we need to look at. Do you want to look at it by yourself for a little bit and then come to me and we can look at it together? Do you get what I mean? Can I tell you what it was from my point of view? Can you tell me what it is from my, you know what I mean? Overstanding and understanding can't be underestimated. You know what I mean? Black studies made me look at black men differently, made me look at them so differently, because when you look at how the system is created to keep them where they are, and what it tells them, continually tells them about themselves, there is no value in the black man. I have to acknowledge that's what the system does, but you also have to acknowledge that. You get what I mean? You're part of a collective that collectively doesn't value itself, and how do you go about fixing that? Do you get what I mean? You're part of it. You get me? I can sit down and do my part, but if you're not willing to do your part, then what happens? You know what I mean? I'm really interested in, you know, black women, what we need from you is, because we can sit down here and pretend that we know, but we all know. Do you get what I mean? If I didn't have men like you in my life, I would have no idea. Do you get what I mean? And a good couple of others who are, you know what I mean, honest enough and open enough and vulnerable. Do you get what I mean? You did that work before I met you. Do you understand what I mean? And it just so happens now that because I've been doing that work on myself, we're able to create something beautiful. Do you understand what I mean? Each counterpart has to be doing the work. You get me? Individually, simultaneously, and collectively. You get what I mean? We need a critical mass of black people that are committed to healing and growth and progression. You get what I mean? So we create a foundation that, you know what I mean, we can stand firm on, and that comes from a place of balance, forgiveness, and ultimately love. You know what I mean? Love of self. You get what I mean? Love of blackness. You get what I mean? All parts of it. You get what I mean? There was nothing before us. There was nothing before us. And everything that came after us is of our doing. You get what I mean? You know what I mean? Half of the story has never been told. We have to get ourselves in a position where we're now willing to tell that story. You get what I mean? From our perspective, not from anybody else's.
Sis, we've got a minute and a half. So what's your parting message?
We need somebody who is brave enough brave enough, courageous enough, open enough, vulnerable enough to do Black women what we need is, you know, we Black women can always talk. We've been doing that, in all honesty. Have we been talking about the right things? Not necessarily. Do you understand what I mean? So there's a conversation that Black women need to have within themselves, within ourselves and amongst ourselves. But we also need Black men to stand up and somebody, to a certain extent, tell us what we've been doing wrong. You get what I mean? So we can get some feedback, in regards to how we do this. It's not, you know what I mean? My parting words must be that